Hello there, Gamerinos and Gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I'm taking a look at a game, or more a demo version of a game, that couldn't have arrived at a better time, following the wake of the Paper Mario remake release. Escape from Ever After is so much of an homage to Paper Mario that it became an outright clone. It's not just the aesthetics though, not just the general art style and the flat characters in 3D environments with a view very much akin to a stage play. It is also the turn-based battles with the many little puzzle mechanics, like enemies being immune to certain attacks or having built-in counters and you having to figure out what actually works. The low damage numbers, action commands for attack and defense, special attacks that require energy you build up with successful action commands or a cheer ability, character abilities used for puzzles during exploration, preemptive strikes, a chapter-based progression tied together through a central hub, a point-based ability equipment system, and I guess a lot more little details here and there. It even starts the same way as the Paper Mario games. It's certainly not the only one of its kind in that regard. There have been straight up Paper Mario clones in the past, with Bug Fables or The Outbound Ghost, that also copied almost every detail of Paper Mario, even to an unnecessary extent. Even a high profile release like the South Park game took more than just inspiration from Paper Mario, though that one kept many of its elements still original and didn't try to be Paper Mario in every regard. But maybe that's just because it also had to be true to the South Park IP, which already had an iconic art style, for example. But why does the game about bugs that's set in forests and caves, or the spooky ghost game, or the fairy tale game, have to have this flat cardboard cutout aesthetic, when they don't even try to allude to papercraft? Even the first Paper Mario, that wasn't really about the characters being paper, had Mario float gently to the ground because he's carried by the wind. I understand that many people are very fond of this art style, but why not try to distinguish their game at least in some way from their role model? That said, the game does look very pleasant. The art style is clean and colorful with expressive characters. The environments are detailed and varied and filled with fitting furniture or foliage or whatever is needed to make them more inviting. Including, for some reason, physics objects that just go apeshit when you slightly touch them. Now in this game you are the hero of a classic fairy tale, Flint Buckler, who set out to defeat the dangerous dragon Tinder, but when he arrived at the dragon's castle, he discovered that a more sinister form of evil has already moved in and taken hold of the fortress: capitalism. So the Ever After Incorporation has found a way to enter books and stories and extract all kinds of resources from those fictional worlds, recruit the workers, and exploit both of them and leave those worlds behind as barren wastelands. And they offer you the opportunity to join up with them and work your way up to middle management. So at that point, Flint joins forces with his arch enemy Tinder and infiltrates the evil corporation, plays along with their schemes and wanders the different storybook worlds in hopes of finding a way to stop the Ever After Inc. And it's just a great concept for a game, and it offers a lot of opportunities to include all kind of better or lesser known creatures, iconic characters and of course imaginative environments. In the prologue, it's mostly the castle and its dungeon, as well as the Three Little Piggies story with its forest and wolf village and high-rise construction site. Yeah, you heard me right, and I believe you already guessed it, but this game doesn't play the whole fairy tale business straight, but takes the Shrek approach in presenting the fairy tales in a more modern, contemporary way, full of satire. Your manager is the moon from a nursery rhyme, his secretary a little star, Pinocchio is a desk jockey, Little Red Riding Hood a receptionist, and the Three Little Piggies lead their own construction business and are tasked with creating apartment buildings as cheap housing for all the fairy tale characters that got evicted from their own stories. So with these sheer endless possibilities for unique and hilarious character designs and set pieces, and to be fair, those are already in the game, why has there been a need for these retro-futuristic bulky robots or generic aliens. Yeah, they walk around the office as well and they just clash with the rest of the fairy tale characters. And yeah, I understand that they are just from sci-fi stories and the like, and are certainly here to hint at later space or future themed levels, but why were they even necessary? I've already mentioned the whole Shrek similarities with the modern interpretation and handling of the traditional fairy tale characters. And the company's name at the center of the story is Ever After Inc., so another allusion to fairy tales. It's not called Story Divers or Book Dwellers or Novel Projects or something like that. So there's just no need for these unfitting character designs that just clash with the rest of the aesthetic. And I don't need a science fiction chapter later. There's enough traditional stories out there taking place on the moon or among the stars. It is incredibly nitpicky, but to me it just lacks consistency. That being said, the setting is presented in a delightful way and I'm looking forward to see where the game will take us later on. And so far, I also enjoy the writing very much. Cutscenes and exposition don't overstay their welcome and overall the presentation is very snappy. The dialogues are charming and while I wouldn't say that it's not on the nose, it is so in a very light-hearted and positive way. Every character has somewhat of an exaggerated personality trait, but not in a way that makes them caricatures, but more so focus on their uniqueness. So there's the sports guy, there's the grumpy dude, the hypochondriac, the main antagonist so far is the slimy businessman, the hero is full of himself but good-natured, and your dragon buddy, I mean the evil dragon who allows you to accompany her for the time being, tries to assert dominance whenever possible and has a bit of a bad temper. It's fun to watch these characters interact with each other and again, these scenes or moments don't overstay their welcome. While not every joke is a winner, they're also not dragged out too much, at least so far, so I'm in good spirits about the story. The core gameplay is what you'd expect from a Paper Mario-like. You traverse and explore diverse environments, talk to the many colorful characters, solve puzzles and of course, fight in lots and lots of battles. And the battles are Paper Mario to a T. It's turn-based JRPG combat without speed stats, so generally your team acts first, then it's the enemy turn, then it's back to you and so forth. During your turn you select from a variety of character-specific abilities as well as use items or employ so-called tactics, which are the same for everyone, like escaping, cheering to build up energy for special attacks, or defending. Enemies often have some quirk or peculiarity. They might have an impenetrable shield, or something sharp and pointy held out towards you, or they fly and are out of reach for short range attacks. So not every party member is able to attack certain enemies, and combat is more about learning or intuiting which character or ability to use against which enemy. And to give your attacks a bit more oomph, you can execute an action command, either by pressing the correct combination of buttons, hold a button for a certain amount of time, or press a button at the exactly right moment. And this, I mean, it works. But it doesn't feel as good as in Paper Mario, where it's really tight but not overly difficult. And it's also not as well implemented as it was in Bug Fables. It reminds me more of The Outbound Ghost, where the action commands aren't always the most intuitive, and the room for mistakes in this game seems to be really small, though that mostly applies to just the timed button press. And you mostly feel that during defense, because of course you can defend and lower the damage you receive during the enemy's turn. And it's not that easy to do in this game. There are some enemies that attack in an arc, they either jump on you or throw something in a similar arc at you, and those are rather easy to defend against. Everything else isn't. From the very start of the game, you'll encounter enemies that charge at you rather fast, or approach you and have no discernible change in animation when the attack happens, or they shoot at you with a hit scan weapon, which means there is no projectile to defend against, you just have to know when the shot happens, or they feint attacks in a really unintuitive way. And you know, these issues wouldn't be so bad if they happened during later chapters, where you carry better items, have access to stronger abilities, or have leveled up your health and magic a few times, but not during the early game. So it's not always that easy to avoid damage, but it gets better. From very early on, you mostly encounter groups of enemies larger than 2, and many of those enemies don't go down in one turn, even with perfect action commands. They either have too many hit points or all damage denying abilities you need to destroy before you can begin to deal damage, and they also start very early on to consistently dish out 2 or more points of damage per attack. In a game where you don't have progressively growing stats like attack power and defense. And with most enemies, even at the start and first chapter, having really faint or no tells for their attacks, where you just have to learn the timing with some trial and error, the combat has you struggling constantly. It's borderline unfair in the early game, and even in later chapters, something like this can get frustrating pretty fast when every enemy is hard to dodge, does a lot of damage and takes ages to die. To get a bit more insight into the enemy's behavior and to be able to see their remaining health, you can scan your foes, just like in Paper Mario. But unlike Paper Mario, this is not a specific character's ability, but something all of them can do, which is a godsend and makes the laborious task of completing the bestiary a lot more reasonable to attain. Now, outside of battles, you have to solve Metroid or Zelda-like puzzles by using the correct abilities in the right spot to progress or uncover hidden goodies. Again, standard fare for a Paper Mario clone. But here the game is a bit more creative than its role model, with more variety in how you get to use the character-specific field abilities and a lot of fun puzzles where you really have to think about which ability to use and how to utilize it correctly. And there are many puzzles that have you combine multiple characters' abilities, and some of them are actual brain teasers, so yeah, some good fun to be had. And these puzzles also feature the most original mechanic in the game, your musician's lute. And even that came straight out of Ocarina of Time. But it is really fun to use. You don't just hit the button and have things just happen. Instead, it's a whole set of adventure-type puzzle-solving abilities that you expand over the course of the game. At first you can only let plants grow, but soon after you learn how to conjure wind, and I'm sure there will be a lot more, and these songs have different uses depending on the situation. They could have made its own game out of this mechanic, and I'd be all for it. Solving these puzzles and being observant often rewards you with little goodies like consumable items, trinkets, which are the game's version of Paper Mario's badges, so they are equipable attacks or passive abilities, and you will find sun gems, and some of those are really well hidden and satisfying to find. And you use those sun gems to trade for useful stuff, like even more trinkets or inventory expansions and the like. And sometimes you stumble across these blueprints that unlock furniture and decoration for your office, which is just a neat little touch, a bit of meaningless yet still fun customization. Same with the different attire for Flint, though that one seems to have at least some use at times. After fighting enough enemies, you level up of course, and it shouldn't come to anyone's surprise that you get to choose between an increase in health, magic, or ability points to equip more attacks and passive abilities. But there's somewhat of a twist to it. Other than in Paper Mario, where you only level up Mario and upgrade your party members only 1 or 2 times through a different system, here each party member has their own stats and you need to manage all of them. So when you select one level up bonus, for example 5 more health points, you then have to distribute those 5 health points among your party members. So there's quite a bit more tactic involved in choosing how to level up, compared to Paper Mario, where it was mostly just a risk-reward decision. Whether the increased complexity was actually necessary or is beneficial to the experience remains to be seen. You can also upgrade your attacks with another collectible, but instead of just flat out improving them, there's a little bit more to it. They certainly all become more useful, but there's either a catch to it, like an increased magic cost, or the benefits are situational. It reminded me a bit of the XCOM Reboot's upgrade system, and I do believe that this will offer some good complexity and customization, and maybe this even offsets the lower amount of ability points each character has, since you have to distribute them between all your party members. So yeah, with all my sometimes smaller and sometimes bigger criticisms about this game, or modest demo, I think the game looks very promising. I'm certainly looking forward to playing this and experience all the wacky worlds. Maybe we get a Little Red Riding Hood cooking adventure, maybe a Jack and the Beanstalk anti-monarchy revolution chapter, the Sleeping Beauty gardening chapter, or a crime mystery around a kidnapper called the Pied Piper. It's a well-made game with lots of charm that could turn out really great once it's finished and the flaws have been ironed out and the story completed. So yeah, if this piqued your interest, check out the demo for yourself and stay tuned for the full release. So with that, I wish you the greatest of days. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.